On what we'll be learning this week, which is the process of socialization. So this week corresponds with chapter 3 of your book, and it is very complementary to chapter 2 because it answers the question, how do we adopt culture? How do we adopt culture? We adopt culture through the process of socialization. So we're going to discuss socialization in several parts this week. We'll talk about this in terms of 2 segments. First, we're going to look at biology in human society. And then in segment 2, we're going to focus on the development of the social self. So first we're going to talk about biology's relationship to society. And then that's going to lead us into a discussion of socialization. And then we will, in segment 2, talk about the development of the social self. We'll also be watching our first video this week, which will likely come on Friday. And will be entitled Secrets of the Wild Child. I'll try to post a link to the video up on the D2L site as well. But if you want to get the points for the video worksheet, you'll come to class and watch the video, complete the video worksheet as well. So, we're going to first move to segment 1, which is biology in human society. We're going to talk a little bit about biology in human society. The first thing that I want to talk about is this concept known as social animals. So human beings are part of a group of other organisms on this planet known as social animals. Social animals have 5 distinct features. 5 distinct features that separate them from other types of animals. So human beings have these 5 distinct features, but there's also a lot of other examples of animals who also have these features as part of their lives. The first is cooperative rearing. So what do we mean by cooperative rearing? It means that either parents, right, of an offspring, or a family of an offspring, or the pack or group in which the offspring was born into, cooperate to raise that animal, right, that young. So cooperative rearing really just means that either the parents, the family beyond the parents, or the group cooperates with one another in raising offspring. So a necessary feature to be qualified as a social animal is participating in this process of cooperative rearing. Parents cooperate, families cooperate, or an entire group cooperates to raise a child, to raise an animal. The second feature of a social animal is known as the process of cooperative foraging. So just as groups or families or a couple cooperates to raise an offspring, we also see that same level of cooperation in bringing in food for the group, for the family, for the pride, for the group of animals. So one feature is cooperative rearing. The next feature that is necessary to qualify as a social animal is cooperative foraging. The third feature of a social animal is generational cohabitation. So the process of cohabitation is living together, right? Living together, staying in some common living space. A feature of a social animal is generational cohabitation. So we see more than one generation of the group, more than one generation of the family, living together, foraging together, cooperatively rearing offspring together. The fourth important or necessary feature of a social animal is social learning. Social learning. So social learning is the process of passing on information from one generation or one part of the group to another part of the group. This can be in terms of the way of going about a task. So if we think about cooperative rearing or cooperative foraging, this could be social learning on how to forage, what to forage for, what to hunt for. In terms of generational cohabitation, how to live. This information gets learned socially as the organism lives within an environment of others. And then finally, the fifth necessary feature that qualifies an animal as being a social animal is differentiated roles. Differentiated roles. Meaning that different people, in the case of humans, or in the case of other animals, different members of the pack, different members of the group, different members of the pod, have different roles or responsibilities. Some may serve as protectors for the group. Some may serve as important caretakers for the group. Some may serve as foragers. Some may serve as hunters. But they have differentiated roles that each animal within the group serves some important function that is different than other animals within the group that also serve important functions for the survival of the group itself. So when we take these examples or these features, cooperative rearing, cooperative foraging, generational cohabitation, social learning, and then finally differentiated roles, there's lots and lots of animals that some biologists make the case for being social. So some of the more, or I should say some of the less controversial cases for social animals include those of chimps, elephants, dolphins, and whales. But you also see biologists make the case for bees and ants to be social animals. Right? For bees and ants to be social animals, along with some of these larger mammals, like dolphins and whales and chimps, apes and elephants. So what separates humans from all these other social animals? Well, in some ways, not much, right? We all participate in cooperative rearing. We all participate in cooperative foraging. We all participate in social learning. We all have differentiated roles. We all cohabitate generationally. There's generations of us living in the same group. So what separates us from other animals like whales and chimps and dolphins and elephants and bees and ants is really the level of complexity that is built into our sociability, right? That's built into our social lives. Human beings are by far the most complex social animal on the face of the earth, right? Rather than cooperative rearing in a very simplistic sense, we have entire families, large family structures, and community structures that we've developed to help us with this process of cooperative rearing. Right? It's not just the parents that raise the child. It's not just the immediate family that raises the child. It is a complex network of teachers and community members, church groups, right? Different community spaces that all kind of collectively help to rear that child, help that child in his or her development. In terms of cooperative foraging, it's not just small groups of people, 2 people or 3 people going out into the woods hunting or gathering. Right? We're no longer really hunter-gatherer. We emerged as a hunter-gatherer society, but today we have this huge institution that helps us to cooperatively forage for our food, right? Cooperatively feed a community, cooperatively feed a nation, cooperatively feed the world, which is this process of agriculture and commerce. Right? You all can go up to Martin's or Giant Eagle or Wegmans and purchase bananas that have been grown in South America. You can purchase a variety of different foods that are grown all over the world that are delivered fresh, right? Cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli that's been grown in California, oranges that have been grown in Florida, wheat that's been grown in the Midwest, chocolate that has been grown in South America, coffee that comes from Kenya, all brought to you by this process of agriculture and commerce, shipped to you fresh in this cooperative process that is far more complex than the process of you and maybe your mate, or you, your mate, and your offspring, or you and a small group of other humans cooperatively foraging the forest floor for nuts and berries and possibly grubs or other types of food that would help you subsist. Instead of generational cohabitation, having different members of the family live together, we congregate in communities, cities, and nations. So when we're talking about generational cohabitation, we're not just talking about people who live in the same house. We live collectively together in these cities that can span tens of millions of people, 20 million people, 30 million people. We look at large conglomerates of cities that can go up to 50 million people. We generationally cohabitate on a very large and complex scale. And then within those cities, we have differentiated roles. We have an entire education system that is really built to differentiate your roles within the economy. You are majoring in something that is going to put you into a career, and that career is going to be different than other careers. Yet, you all share the common the common ground of being part of an economy, right? Being part of an economy that services not only yourself, but services the needs of your community, that services the needs of your state, that services the needs of your nation, that services the needs of the world. And then finally, social learning, right? We don't just have small groups of people communicating how to use simple tasks and simple tools. We have an entire institution of education. So even outside of the family, there's a very complex system that has been built simply for the process of teaching and learning. Simply for the process of teaching and learning. And so humans are, in comparison to other social animals, these very, very, very complex organisms. Not just complex in our own biology, but complex in our interrelationships with others. And so sociologists are tasked with trying to figure out why that is possible and why that happened. Why are we the most complex social creatures on the planet? Why are we by far the most complex social creatures on the planet? Sociologists have to ask these questions. And so we look to different sources to figure out why that is possible, why that is the case. So the first kind of, I think, natural place to look for a sociologist is instincts. Right? Animals are born with instincts. Are humans born with instincts? Right? Are humans born with instincts? Well, if I was to ask you this question, some of you would say yes, and some of you would say no. Some of you would say, yes, humans are born with instincts. Others of you would say humans are not born with instincts. Well, the answer to this is that humans are born with what are known as weak instinctual behaviors. Weak instincts. I want you to make sure that you write that down. Humans are born with weak instincts rather than strong instincts. For those of you who would likely answer the question, no, humans are not born with instincts, you're thinking about strong instincts, strong instinctual behavior. Strong instincts are ones that an animal or an organism is born with, and those instincts remain in that animal throughout their lifetime. Right? They don't disappear after a period of time. Humans have weak instincts. Weak instincts are those that a person is born with, or an animal is born with, an organism is born with, and after a certain period of time, they no longer exist. After a certain period of time, they weaken and eventually disappear. There's lots and lots of examples of human instincts, these behaviors that humans instinctually do at the time that they are born, but typically by the time they are 6 months old, they no longer have these instinctual behaviors. The medical community and Americans and popular culture has, instead of calling these instincts, have called these reflexes, reflexive behavior. I think it somewhat stems from maybe the level of discomfort that we feel thinking about being born with instincts. I think it might stem from the fact that they are weak, that they disappear after a certain period of time. But nonetheless, they are instinctual behaviors. A child born here, or born in Bangladesh, or born in China, or born in Brazil, or born in Canada, or born in Europe, will all do these things if these instincts are activated. The first is known as the Moro reflex. The Moro reflex lasts from about birth until 2 months of age. If you take a child and you put the child's arms to its chest, bundle its arms up into its chest, and then, supporting its head, simulate dropping. I just move that child back very quickly. That child, 100% of the time, from birth until 2 months, whether born here or in Europe or Brazil or China or in India, wherever, will instinctually throw its arms out, fingers out. You can do this again and again. There's examples of this on YouTube. I may post some on D2L for you to view. Happens all the time, from birth until 2 months. Eventually, this instinctual behavior wears off. The child, you simulate dropping it, no longer does the Moro reflex. No longer 100% of the time throws its arms out, fingers out. Aside from the Moro reflex is the rooting sucking reflex. It exists from about birth until 4 months. These are actually 2 reflexes. The first is the rooting reflex. If you take a child and you stimulate its cheek, it will root for what that stimulation is. So if you rub that side of a baby's face, it will turn its face towards that stimulation. Rub the other side of the child's cheek, it will 100% of the time root for that stimulation. Move its face towards that stimulation. The second thing that a child will do when its face is stimulated from birth to 4 months will try to suck or suckle on that stimulation. Right, so keep your finger there, it'll root out your finger, and then it'll begin to suckle on your finger. It will begin to suck on your finger. The rooting sucking reflex lasts from birth to 4 months. So after 4 months, you stimulate a child's face, it may not root, and it may not suck. But up until that period of time, that instinct will be with that child. The third one is the palmar grasp reflex, the palmar grasp reflex. This is a fun one to do with newborns. If you take a newborn, birth to 6 months, you open up the newborn's palm, and then you stimulate the newborn's palm with your finger, it will instinctually, 100% of the time, close its hand around that stimulation. Close its hand around that stimulation. 0 to 6 months, 100% of the time, whether the child was born in the United States, in Europe, in Bangladesh, in China, in India, Brazil, Africa, what have you, that child, when stimulated on its palm, will grasp what the stimulation is. Will grasp the finger. And then finally, birth to 6 months is the swimming reflex. If you put a child, birth to 6 months, in a pool of water, face down in a pool of water, that child, from birth to 6 months, will first instinctually hold its breath for a certain period of time, and second, it will kick its arms and legs. It will kick its arms and legs, and it will hold its breath from birth to 6 months if placed face down in a pool of water. After 6 months, this reflex has disappeared. A child will not instinctually hold its breath in water, will not instinctually kick its legs and arms if in water. But from birth to 6 months, it does. So, let's put all of these together. The Moro reflex, the rooting sucking reflex, the palmar grasp reflex, the swimming reflex. What could we group these weak instincts together and think of them as? What do y'all think? A child, go ahead.
Survival instincts.
So they're survival instincts. And how are they survival instincts?
Well, one is to survive in water, another is to survive in falling.
Mm-hmm.
The one is to survive to eat or from touch. And the other one is, I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, the Moro reflex, throwing the arms out, that is also part of preventing itself from falling. But if you think about these reflexes, right, so they're survival instincts. We can think of them as survival instincts. What do they preclude? What do they require for a child to survive? What do they require? Yeah, they require another person, right? They require another person. If the child is falling and it throws out the Moro reflex, right, what is it really doing? It's reaching out to assist being grabbed. As you drop the child throws its hands out, you can grab the child. The palmar grasp reflex. The child is grabbing on and assisting from falling in the first place. The rooting sucking reflex, it is assisting with feeding. And then finally, the swimming reflex. If we think about, right, the beginning of human history on the plains of Africa, a child who is dropped in water during the rainy season has the ability to hold its breath for a certain amount of time and to stay afloat for a certain amount of time to be rescued, right? To be rescued. So all of these require, if they are to be considered survival instincts, they require the assistance of another person. So when sociologists look at instincts, we think about them in terms of the capacity for human attachment, right? The capacity for human attachment. If you were going to have a young child that needs assistance, who instinctually provides assistance for its survival, but as a result needs another person for those survival instincts to work, this provides the format or the basis, the foundation for human attachments to occur. Right? A child or children who are left without a parent from at least birth to 6 months is going to die, unfortunately. Right? Is going to die. Its survival instincts did not allow it to survive without another person. Right? Without a mother or without a father, without a family, without a group. So instinctual behavior can account for human attachments. However, it doesn't really account for how social development unfolds. These instincts are weak. They are gone by 6 months. And we know that there's no such thing as a society that was created by 7-month-olds. Right? Society is created by people who are adults. So instinctual behavior erodes and disappears after 6 months. It can account for the development of human attachments, but can't really account for how, why, and under what circumstances did the complex social development that we have occur. Y'all follow me? By show of hands, how many of you will follow me? Good, 100%. Wonderful.